Paris, 1983, in a quiet courtroom. A nervous French diplomat stands up on the witness stand. Everyone is shocked as he reveals a surprising truth. For nearly 20 years, I believed I was in love with a woman, but he was a man. He was a Beijing opera singer who fooled the diplomat into thinking he was a woman for over 2 decades. Even more surprising, this man convinced the diplomat they had a child together. Their relationship lies at the heart of a major spy operation between China and France. Through years of deception, they extracted top-secret information, helping China gain a critical edge on the world stage. This isn't a story made up. This is the real story of Shi Pei Pu. The year is 1964. The world is divided, and the Cold War is at its peak. As fears of nuclear war grow, countries are pulled into a world of espionage. China is struggling under Mao's policies, facing hunger and political unrest. Meanwhile, in Paris, the French government is trying to maintain its global standing, balancing relationships with the United States, the Soviet Union, and other rising powers. French President Charles de Gaulle is worried about diplomatic tensions. He was eager to improve relations with China, despite its isolation from the West. As a result, France opened its embassy in Beijing in 1964. The goal was to strengthen diplomatic ties and gain insights into China's resources and political ambitions. At the center of this mission is Bernard Boursicot, a skilled diplomat at the French embassy, who was sent to gather important information about China's economy, military plans, and nuclear ambitions. All while maintaining a low profile amid rising political tensions. At a fancy embassy party, Bernard first laid eyes on Shi Pei Pu. The French embassy was hosting a diplomatic gathering to celebrate and bond closely with China. Shi Pei Pu, who was introduced as a famous Beijing opera singer, captures everyone's attention with her beauty and grace. Bernard finds her enchanting, her presence almost magical. As the evening continues, they talk, and Bernard is captivated by her mystery, elegance, and the ease with which she navigates the social circles of the diplomatic elite. She asks him questions about his life as a diplomat, his opinion about the political situation, and his views on France's position in Asia. By the end of the night, Bernard is fascinated by her. What started as a small talk evolves into a deep conversation, and Bernard, unwittingly, opens up about his work, his mission, and his frustrations with the political landscape. Weeks go by, and Bernard can't stop thinking about Shi Pei Pu. He has always been serious about his job, but something about her occupies his mind. 1 month later, she reaches out, inviting him to meet again. This time, alone. When they meet, their connection grows stronger, moving past mere diplomacy into something more personal. Their meetings become more regular, and Bernard begins to feel less like a diplomat and more like someone in love. Shi Pei Pu is also becoming emotionally invested. The lines between professional duty and personal feelings start to blur. What had begun as a carefully calculated mission now felt more complicated. She's under constant risk of being discovered. What started as a mission to collect intelligence has turned into a complex emotional entanglement for both. Their relationship continued to grow for 20 years, without Bernard realizing she was actually a man. Now you might be wondering, how could they have a sexual relationship without him ever noticing? We'll explain all the details of how Shi Pei Pu used clever, deceptive techniques to maintain the success of her spy operation. And the truth will leave you speechless. During one of their private meetings, she brings up an interesting topic. I've heard that France is planning to expand its trade in Asia and increase exports to the region. Bernard nods with agreement, but little does he know, this chat, like many others, will be used by the Chinese government to gain a stronger trade advantage. In a strategic move, China begins to flood the Asian market with cheaper products to undercut France's exports. While the French government remains in the dark, China builds its trade presence in Asia. As a result, French businesses struggle to compete, totally unaware of the hidden exchange of intelligence. But it doesn't stop here. During one of their private conversations, Bernard told her that France was closely monitoring China's nuclear program. She quickly shares this vital information with Chinese intelligence. In response, the Chinese government creates a clever trick. They sent agents to Bernard's diplomatic meetings, telling him that China's nuclear program is still underdeveloped and poses no threat. This false information led French officials to underestimate China's power, and prompted them to support China with technology and resources, under the mistaken assumption that they were helping a harmless, friendly nation. In reality, Bernard had become a pawn in a big geopolitical game, helping a rising superpower strengthen its nuclear capabilities. The consequences of his unwitting role in this espionage would be far-reaching, and eventually, devastating. Bernard and Shi Pei Pu always met in secret, behind closed doors and in the dark. She told him she had to pretend to be a man in order to go out in public and thus be able to take care of her father. In a time when China was very strict and cautious, that story seemed believable, even kind of romantic. What happened in their private moments is hard to believe. Shi Pei Pu wanted their intimacy to happen in total darkness. No lights, no peeking, and only certain touches were allowed. In my culture, she told Bernard, a woman must remain modest. We can never be seen, not even by those we love. He respected that, he believed in her. But there was more happening than cultural tradition. There was an intricate method, a deception so elaborate that it transcended into a form of acting and performance. During their intimate times, Shi Pei Pu employed an anatomical illusion, a tucking technique. He tucked his genitals back between his thighs to look like a woman. When lying flat on his back, with his legs pressed together, the trick was nearly complete, especially in the dark and when emotions ran high. Their physical encounters were quick and carefully planned. There were no lingering touches, no slow undressing, and never any light. Bernard, young and naive, never suspected anything was wrong, because Shi Pei Pu didn't just control the body, he controlled the mind. To deepen the illusion, Shi Pei Pu took it a step further. The Chinese government, now in complete control of the information they had gathered, had instructed its spy to create the elaborate deception of pregnancy and parenthood, a move designed to tighten the emotional hold on Bernard. Months went by, without Bernard seeing his newborn. During this time, Shi Pei Pu sent many letters, reassuring him the baby was kept safe. She also wrote about her struggles with her pregnancy condition, and how hard it was to see him, especially with his demanding work schedule, and the cultural difficulties that surrounded her. Then one day, Shi Pei Pu introduced Bernard to a little boy, she claimed was their son. But for Bernard, it was all the proof he needed. He had no doubt left. She gave me a child, he later said. What else could I believe? By the early 1970s, Bernard had fully embraced his double life, diplomat by day, secret lover, and father by night. As their relationship grew more intense, the stakes got higher. Bernard's role at the embassy became more crucial, and Shi Pei Pu's position within the Chinese government grew more unstable. Bernard's newfound fatherhood made him increasingly vulnerable. In private meetings, Shi Pei Pu would speak of the challenges of raising their child in secret, the fears for their safety, and how much the child needed his protection. Bernard, emotionally drained and deeply in love, began to see his connection with China as something more than just a diplomatic exchange. He truly believed in the family he had built. The Chinese government cleverly exploited this influence to extract information at every chance they had, as they did in their next move, marking a major turning point in their strategy. In the late 1960s, Bernard was approached by Kang Sheng, a member of the Chinese Secret Service, who warned him of the grave consequences of continuing his relationship with Shi Pei Pu. He then offered him access to Shi Pei Pu and safety for their child in exchange for passing documents. Caught between his responsibility to France and his love for his family, he agreed to share more information, hoping to keep them safe. The leaked documents were gold to the Chinese intelligence. They revealed France's diplomatic strategies, internal embassy operations, and confidential communications across Asia, giving China a clear window into Western thinking during a tense Cold War climate. For France, it was a silent wound. Their credibility was shaken, security protocols were questioned, and trust among allies was quietly fractured. By 1983, French intelligence had grown suspicious. They were monitoring Bernard's movements and communications, and noticed strange patterns that linked his diplomatic role to meetings with people connected to China. Just before, or possibly during, his return to France, Bernard was arrested. At that time, Shi Pei Pu had already moved to Paris in the early 1980s to stay close to Bernard. He was living a quiet life and sometimes performed as an opera singer. However, when Bernard was detained, Shi Pei Pu was also arrested. During Bernard Boursicot's trial, the unimaginable happened. Once a respected French diplomat, now taking the witness stand. He was shaking with a trembling voice. He confessed the truth that had haunted him for years. For nearly 20 years, I believed I was in love with a woman, but he was a man. People were stunned. Bernard's words shocked the public and stirred great interest in the world of international diplomacy. Opinions about Bernard were divided. Some viewed him as a victim, tricked by a clever spy who used his feelings against him. Others saw him as a traitor who betrayed his country for love. As the trial continued, medical experts explained how the tricks worked, and intelligence officials revealed how classified information had been passed to China. Both Bernard and Shi Pei Pu were charged. Bernard was found guilty of espionage, having unwittingly shared classified documents due to emotional manipulation. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but served only about 18 months before being pardoned by French President François Mitterrand in 1987. Shi Pei Pu also received a 6-year prison sentence, but served only about 1 year. He was released early because of political embarrassment, his age, and poor health. Once media interest faded, authorities saw little reason to keep him in jail. After his release, Shi Pei Pu returned quietly to China, where he lived out of the public eye. He spent the rest of his life hiding, burdened by the choices he made and the deceitful life he lived, until he died in 2009. Following his arrest, Bernard's life fell apart. He felt betrayed, embarrassed, and overwhelmed by his emotions. He even tried to take his own life, unable to cope with what had happened. Over time, Bernard found a sense of peace. He lived quietly with a new partner named Terry, and built a strong bond with a child he had once thought was his own. The child, raised by a French diplomat and a Chinese opera singer, eventually discovered the truth about his life. Everything he knew was a big deception made for political reasons. After the trial, he vanished from public view. French authorities quietly took custody of him, shielding him from the media storm. It's believed he was given a new identity to protect his future. Since then, no trace has surfaced. No interviews, no photos, and no confirmation of who he became. Bernard, who had been deeply hurt, slowly put his life back together. Yet he never forgot the love that had led him astray, or the heavy price he paid for it. While their tale ended decades ago, the questions it leaves behind still echo today. How well do we know the people we love? How far can deception go when emotions are involved? What would you have done in Bernard's place? Was he a traitor who betrayed his country, a victim of deep love, or something in between? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy uncovering strange, true stories from the shadows of history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because many more mysteries are waiting to be told. Until next time, stay curious.